Think about that for a second. 17 to 18 years is an eternity to carry a scarlet letter you never earned. I mean, can you imagine carrying the weight of someone else's crime for almost 2 decades? A brand, a scarlet letter, like that person said, that makes you totally unemployable. You can't get a license. Sometimes you can't even rent an apartment. So that leads us to this terrifying question. How can a simple customer service job you took way back in 2008 completely derail your career today in 2026? It sounds insane, but for hundreds of people, this isn't a hypothetical. It's their reality. A single line on a resume from 18 years ago, it pops up like a giant red flag on every single background check. To figure out how this is even possible, we've got to dive into this incredible story of a massive fraud and the innocent people it left behind. Yeah, today we're pulling back the curtain on what's known as the Americorp scam. And this wasn't just some small-time con. We're talking about a massive fraud that ripped off over $100 million from people who were already struggling. But the crazy part, the part we're focusing on, is how it left a trail of completely unwitting employees, well, basically blackballed for life. So let's put a face to this problem. Let's talk about Claudia. Back in 2007, she got a customer service job at this company, Americorp. Pretty standard, right? Well, fast forward to today, that one job makes it impossible for her to get work in financial services. I mean, she gets denied for jobs, for licenses, over and over again. All because a background check flags that one employer from almost 2 decades ago. And this really gets to the heart of it, right? In her own words, she didn't know any better. She wasn't an expert in debt settlement. Like so many others caught up in this, she was just a low-level employee. They hand you a script, they hand you a phone, and you do your job. She had absolutely no clue. She was just a tiny cog in this giant fraudulent machine. She just needed a job, and a friend hooked her up. It's as simple as that. Okay, so what was actually going on at Americorp? On the surface, they look like the good guys. They were a debt relief company, a lifeline for people who were completely drowning in credit card debt. But that was just the cover story. Behind the scenes, it was this incredibly well-oiled machine built for one purpose, and one purpose only: to steal. The whole scam hinged on this one really devious tactic they called the 11-month hold. Now, it might sound a little technical, but the idea is brutally simple. The company would tell a client, hey, send us money every month and we'll work with your creditors. But then, for almost a full year, they did absolutely nothing. They just sat on the money. So let's walk through exactly how this worked, step by step. First, they'd find people who were desperate and tell them, stop paying your credit cards, pay us instead. Okay, step 2. The second that money came in, Americorp would just skim 16 to 18% right off the top in illegal upfront fees. Then, for the next 11, sometimes even 18 months, they just ignored the creditors completely, all while the client's debt is just exploding with late fees and penalties. And the result? The very people who came for help ended up getting sued by their creditors, their credit destroyed, their financial lives just completely in ruins. And the sheer scale of this, I mean, just look at that number. This wasn't some little operation in a basement. They siphoned nearly $103 million from over 5,200 victims. Even the court called it, and I'm quoting here, an extraordinary case of fraud on a massive scale. That's not an exaggeration. A scam this big, this organized, it doesn't just happen by accident. It has to be designed. So who were the architects of all this? Who were the masterminds pulling the strings while people like Claudia were just innocently answering the phones? Well, it turns out the whole thing was a pretty organized crew. At the very top, you've got Timothy McCallan. He's the mastermind, and this wasn't his first rodeo. He had a history of this stuff. Interestingly, he kind of learned the ropes from his high school buddy, Andres Puake, who ran a similar scam before him. Then, under McCallan, you had his key lieutenants, Vanessa Vinicombe, who was basically the enforcer running a fake legal arm, and a lawyer named Andy Nelms, who was the public face of the so-called attorney-backed company. Okay, so with a fraud this huge, with so many lives ruined, you'd expect some serious prison time, right? The justice system did get involved, a huge judgment was made, but the final outcome, it's complicated. And for a lot of people, it was just deeply, deeply unsatisfying. And this right here is where the whole idea of justice really starts to fall apart. So on one side, you have the civil case. A court drops this massive $103 million fraud judgment on McCallan and his companies. Great. But then you look at the criminal case, and there were 0 criminal charges ever filed against him for the Americorp fraud itself. I'm going to say that again, 0. So this is the part you really have to understand. Timothy McCallan did end up going to jail, but, and this is a huge but, it wasn't for stealing $103 million from thousands of victims. Nope, he was jailed for civil contempt of court. Why? Because he tried to hide over $20 million in assets, he lied to the court, he obstructed the investigation. You get the picture. He was punished for the cover-up, not for the actual crime. So for nearly 18 years, innocent people like Claudia have been paying the price for a crime they had nothing to do with. But it does not have to be a life sentence. There is actually a playbook, a clear step-by-step guide that former employees can use to finally fight back and get their careers back on track. Okay, so step 1 is all about getting the proof. You have to get the official court documents that show you were just a low-level employee, and this is key, that there were no findings of wrongdoing against you. Step 2, you write a simple 1-page explanation to go with every single job application. Step 3 is about being smart. Target employers and recruiters who already know about the Americorp story. After that, you've got to do some cleanup. File requests to get your name scrubbed from old online complaint boards. And finally, number 5, and this is a powerful one. You own the story. You flip the script and turn this whole nightmare into a strength. And here's the best part. This isn't some vague, years-long process. This is a real, actionable plan. In just the first couple of weeks, you can have those critical court documents in your hands. By week 3, you could be sending out applications with your addendum ready to go. You spend the next month or so getting your name cleaned up online, and by month 3, you can actually be publishing your story, reclaiming the narrative, and turning this thing that's haunted you into a source of power. So this whole saga really boils down to this one powerful question. When the system fails you, when it delivers a verdict but doesn't deliver real justice, what do you do? Well, it seems the answer is you're forced to write your own justice. It shows that sometimes the only way forward is to arm yourself with the facts, with the truth, and write the final chapter of your story yourself.